The phone rang at 2 a.m., sharp and unforgiving, slicing through the fragile silence of a small apartment where exhaustion had finally won. Armin Hale jolted awake with his heart racing, one hand instinctively reaching for the nightstand while the other tightened around the thin blanket covering his sleeping son. The call was wrong. It was meant for someone else. But that single mistake would drag Armin out of a life he had learned to survive quietly, and into a moment that would change everything before the sun fully rose. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Condora Life. Stories like this matter because people like Armin exist everywhere. Armin was a single father by circumstance, not by choice. 3 years earlier, life had folded in on itself when his wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind hospital bills, unanswered questions, and a 4-year-old boy named Soren who still asked why his mother never came back from work. Since then, Armin's world had shrunk to routines and responsibilities. Mornings were rushed but careful, lunches packed with love instead of money, and days spent working as a night security supervisor at a medical complex so he could be present during daylight hours. He slept in fragments and dreamed in regrets, but he never complained. Survival left little room for bitterness. The call came from a private number. The voice on the other end was strained and panicked, mentioning a patient arrival, an emergency authorization, and a name Armin didn't recognize. He tried to explain the mistake, but the line disconnected. Minutes later, his phone buzzed again with a message that included an address, a room number, and the word urgent. Against reason and fatigue, something in Armin stirred. Perhaps it was habit from years of showing up when no one else could. Perhaps it was simply the knowledge that ignoring a plea, even a mistaken one, would haunt him more than losing a few hours of sleep. By the time dawn began to thin the darkness, Armin stood in the polished corridors of a private hospital he had only ever patrolled from the outside. The building smelled of antiseptic and quiet fear. Staff hurried past him without questions, assuming he belonged. He followed the directions to a waiting area where a woman sat alone, her posture stiff with control barely holding together. Her name was Callista Rowan, though Armin didn't know then that she was the CEO of a global healthcare company, accustomed to command rooms, not sit helplessly in them. The mistake revealed itself quickly. Armin was not the contact they were waiting for. He was not family, not staff, not anyone important on paper. He apologized and turned to leave, already calculating how little sleep he would get before waking Soren for school. But something stopped him. Callista's face, pale under the fluorescent lights, held a kind of loneliness Armin recognized too well. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that comes when power and wealth fail to protect what matters. Morning fully arrived as hours passed. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, transforming the hospital from a place of crisis into one of routine. Armin stayed. He didn't know why at first. He brought water when Callista's hands trembled, helped navigate paperwork when she stared blankly at forms, and sat silently when words would only intrude. He spoke once about his son, about how fear changes shape when you love someone more than yourself. Callista listened like someone remembering how to breathe. What Callista never expected was how deeply a stranger's presence could steady her. She had built an empire on decisiveness, but in that room, she was simply human. And Armin, who believed his life had narrowed into invisibility, became the one person who treated her not as a title, but as someone allowed to break. By late morning, the crisis eased. Doctors moved with calmer steps. The urgent tension softened into cautious relief. Armin rose, preparing to leave quietly, the way he always did. He thought his role was finished. But Callista watched him walk toward the exit, the men who had arrived by accident and stayed by choice, and realized something unsettling. She could not let him disappear back into the shadows of a life that had already taken too much from him. She asked questions. Not the shallow kind, but the kind that uncover truths people usually hide. She learned about Armin's night shifts, his constant exhaustion, the brilliance he once carried before life demanded sacrifice instead. She saw competence, humility, and a kind of integrity money could not buy. By the time noonlight filled the hallway, the wrong call no longer felt wrong at all. Callista stopped him before he left. Not with promises or pity, but with opportunity. A temporary position became a discussion, then a vision. She spoke of rebuilding systems with people who understood the ground level of care. Armin listened cautiously. Hope had hurt him before. But something in her eyes was different. It wasn't charity. It was respect. Days later, Armin returned to the hospital in daylight, not as a visitor or guard, but as part of something new. His schedule changed. His son saw more of him. Soren laughed more. The apartment felt warmer. The past didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. Armin still carried grief, but now it walked beside purpose instead of despair. Near the end of this story, if it touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and subscribe to Kindora Life. Your support helps stories of quiet courage reach people who need them most. And before this video ends, we have a special request for you. Comment below and tell us what kindness means to you, or share a moment when a small decision changed your life. Your words matter more than you know. The call at 2 a.m. was a mistake. But some mistakes are invitations in disguise. In the bright honesty of daytime, Armin learned that showing up, even when tired and unseen, can rewrite a future. And Callista learned that leadership sometimes begins by listening to the men who almost walked away.